Good morning. Welcome to the January 27th, 2020 workshop of the Orlando City Council. Today we're going to be focused on transportation, and we've done a lot in transportation over the last several years, about $10 billion worth of local construction, everything from the Wekiva Parkway to I-4 to the Expressway Authority Work Plan to the Southern Terminal. But we have 1,500 people moving to Central Florida every single week. We've had great success on a lot of fronts, but one way that success could be stymied would be to be stuck in traffic and not keeping up with our transportation infrastructure. Mayor Demings is here today to talk to us about the possibility of a dedicated funding source for transportation. And I can tell you, in the 17 years I've been mayor, we've been talking about a dedicated transportation funding source, at least those 17 years, and I'm guessing a couple decades before that. We were unsuccessful in 2004 with Mobility 2020, and here it is 2020, so we're going to get that opportunity again. So Mayor Demings, thank you for being here. I'd invite you to the podium, and we also welcome back Byron Brooks, who looks pretty comfortable sitting right there.
All right. All right, let me begin by saying good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. It is indeed an honor to be back here in the chambers of City Council. It's been nearly 18 years since I retired from the City of Orlando, and so a lot has changed during that period of time. But today I'm excited to be here. I did bring some backup with me, some of our staff. If there are any tough questions that I cannot answer, I am certain that they will be able to answer it. What I'm going to do today is just begin by sharing with you, this is probably my 142nd time presenting somewhere in this community on this subject of the potential for a sales tax referendum that will go on the ballot in November of this year. And so I'm going to start today by asking you all a question that I have done at each one of those 140 plus presentations that we've done, so that we all kind of come to agreement about certain things. So the question is, how many of you believe that we have a traffic congestion problem? Would you raise your hand? Those of you in this audience, would you raise your hand? Okay. And I will tell you that almost in each one of those cases that I've done the presentation, nearly 100% of the hands always go up, and we agree that we have a traffic congestion problem. The second question I always ask is, how many of you want the leadership in this community to do something about it? So how many of you want the leadership in this community to do something about it? Raise your hand. Okay. Almost always 100% of the people in the room always say they want us to do something about it. And full disclosure, when we talk about how to solve the problem, we come up with multiple ways to solve the problem. And when we come to, well, how do we pay for it? That is where we may not have total agreement. But our goal is to, before November of this year, to really present so that each one of the members of our public who we ask to vote for this one way or the other, that we will have done our job if they see themselves in the storyline of benefiting somehow from this transportation tax. If we don't do a good job of trying to demonstrate how individuals will benefit individually, then we will fail. So I'm going to move forward with the presentation this morning and start by kind of giving you an overall review of some of the facts here. The population in Orange County now, as of 2020, is about 1.4 million people. 90% of our residents live in urban communities, and about 10% live in rural communities. We are the fifth largest by population in the state of Florida, and growing quickly by nearly 1,000 new residents each week. In terms of land area, Orange County is a fairly large county with nearly 1,000 square miles, which begs the question about how do we better connect ourselves in terms of transportation. There are 13 municipalities within the county. Of course, Orlando is the largest municipality, followed by the city of Apopka, right down to the smallest city with Bay Lake out in the Lake Buena Vista, Reedy Creek, Disney area. Our residents are living and working in Orange County. About 87% of them live and work within Orange County itself. How is transportation currently funded? Just a quick review. I know that for those of you, I don't have to get into this, but for those members of the public, we typically fund our transportation through 5 different revenue sources. One, the gas tax. When you go to fill up your automobiles with gasoline, there's a local option gas tax. And then impact fees. When we grow, we charge development impact fees. Then there are certain restricted sources of revenues, and then of course property taxes, and then the sales tax. Today we get a certain number, a certain percentage of our sales tax back into the community for transportation. How is this transportation funding currently being used? It's been used to resurface roadways. It's used to expand the roadway infrastructures. It's used to support the Lynx transit system, Sunrail in some ways, street lighting projects, bicycle pedestrian safety initiatives, and then signalization at different intersections. Lynx is currently funded by using property taxes here within Orange County. Of Lynx's $148 million operating budget, Orange County provides about $55 million of that, and it is taken from our general fund. We also fund portions of Sunrail, and then we have funded various other mass transit studies in the past, and we're using some of that information as we go forward to talk about the potential for the future. Lynx, as you know, not only serves Orange County, but it serves Seminole County and Osceola counties for a total of about 2,500 square miles, population of over 2 million. It has 70 plus bus routes, 13 neighbor link routes, and more than 25 million trips arise each year. And so with Lynx, they have a total of over 4,300 bus stops. Sadly, I have to say that the overwhelming majority of the bus stops do not have shelter. As you can see, a little over 1,100 of the bus stops actually have shelter. And when we look at the frequency, I'm going to show you that in terms of the 15 minutes or less between buses arriving to pick up passengers, only 7% of the bus routes have 15-minute or less wait times between buses. But if you look at the red, nearly half of all of the bus routes have a 60-minute or better wait. That means that for some of our public who depends on Lynx as their primary mode of transportation, they have to wait over an hour between buses. So if you miss that bus and you're trying to get to work on time, you're going to have some significant challenges there. In terms of commuter rail, Sunrail has 16 stations along a 49-mile corridor serving Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and Volusia counties. In May of next year, it is planned that the operation and responsibility for our commuter rail will be turned over to local governments to fund. Sunrail, as you know, is a weekday-only service. It doesn't typically run on the weekends. At peak hours, the frequency is about every 30 minutes, off-peak 90-minute frequencies. And what we are hearing from the different feedback that we have received about Sunrail, people really want to see Sunrail operate more frequently in the evenings and on weekends and holidays. And they really desire to have additional spurs that come off of Sunrail that really go out east and west and in different quadrants of our county to better connect the county countywide. When we look at several metropolitan communities around America, that have robust systems. You see some of the major cities here. You see Atlanta, Miami-Dade County. You see the Metropolitan Transit Authority in Nashville, Broward, the HART system in Tampa. And on this particular chart, you can see that when we look at the per capita costs for our system, we're at the bottom of this particular chart. The per capita revenues that we have is about $71 versus MARTA in Atlanta at $394. I would tell you the distinction between some of the other metropolitan communities is that they have a dedicated funding source, and of course we do not, and because of that we are ranked on this particular chart near the bottom, or at the bottom. Okay, why a transportation sales tax? It is estimated that it will generate about $596.4 million on an annual basis, and that's based on numbers from the Florida Department of Revenue. It has a flexible use. It can be used to invest in capital as well as operations and maintenance costs. So we would be able to invest in capital items or infrastructure improvement projects, as well as capital items associated with Sunrail or with links, and it could be used for the maintenance of some of those projects as well. In terms of who would pay, this is really the only methodology where 51% of the cost of this sales tax would be paid by the visitors, wouldn't be on the backs of the people here. So I'm going to talk a little bit further about some of the other options that we could have looked at in terms of trying to do something transformative for our community, but none of them would have produced the kind of revenues that a full penny would produce. It does not apply to purchases or sales beyond $5,000. So if you bought an automobile, let's say a new automobile, you would only pay the sales tax up to the $5,000. That portion thereafter, you wouldn't pay the sales tax. It does not apply to essential grocery items or prescription drug medications, medical supplies, or utilities. This list isn't exhaustive here because there's a whole list of other things that it will not apply to as well. But we wanted to give you an idea about some of the things that it would not apply to. When we look at the current sales tax and millage rates, I'm going to tell you one of the reasons why many people move to Florida is because we don't have a sales tax. One of the reasons why they move to Central Florida is because our property taxes are relatively low. In fact, out of Florida's 67 counties, Orange County has the 10th lowest county government operating millage rate in the state of Florida. If you look at the comparison here within the Central Florida counties, with the exception of Brevard County, Orange County at 4.4347 as a millage rate has the lowest millage rate. You can look within the metro area here. Again, we have the lowest property tax rate. If we said a better option would be to raise property taxes, the challenge I see with that is that if we use that option, that means 100% of the burden to pay for a transformative system will be paid by only those who own property within Orange County. We will leave out that 51% of the tourists who come here in the area. At a half meal increase, it would generate $72 million. A full meal would be $144 million. So what did we say to you? A full penny would produce nearly $600 million. And we, again, leave out the opportunity to have the tourists who are helping to congest our roadways participate in paying for the improvements. The gas tax. I, again, think that not a good option, but we could increase the local option gas tax. As you can see there in 2019, The local option gas tax brought in about $43 million. It is projected that during 2020 it will bring in $43 million. But you can see that to the right of this chart that is flat at best, if not declining, because the motor vehicles being manufactured today are more fuel efficient, and we now are going to more electric vehicles. So it's a decline in revenue source. But if we increase it to the maximum that we could here within Orange County, that gas tax would bring in an additional $27 million. So $27 million for the gas tax, a full meal will be $144 million. The sales tax, nearly $600 million. So how do we compare within the local region in terms of the current sales tax? If you look at the top bar there, Orange County's current sales tax consists of 6% that goes to the state, a half penny that goes to our schools. So the total sales tax in Orange County, that far right column, is 6.5%. So when we compare that to Seminole County today is at 7%. Osceola County today is at 7.5%. Broward County, another urban county, is at 7%. Hillsborough County, in November of 2018, they passed a referendum, and they're at 8.5%. Volusia County is at 6.5%. You all know that in May of last year, Volusia County put on the ballot a 1 penny or 1% sales tax increase, and it failed. They didn't use this process that we are using here, where we're building up this from the grassroots, where we're getting community input before we say, here's the plan. Palm Beach County is at 7%, Lake County is at 7%. So if you were here in Orange, Osceola, Seminole, or Lake County, Orange County has the lowest current sales tax rate. So if you were going to buy goods or commodities, you could save money today if you purchase it here in Orange County. The Orange County is absolutely critical to the overall regional solutions to transportation here, because we're the hub of the region. And so all of these other counties are watching very carefully what is going to happen with this sales tax initiative here in Orange County. When we look at the 100 metropolitan areas around the country, the median sales rate is 8.5%. So even across America, we still have a relatively low sales tax rate. Where are we at in the process? Okay, we're at this community engagement stage of the process. So what we're doing here is we're going to have hundreds of these meetings out with different components of our public to get their input about what it is that they would like to see in terms of the solution to the traffic congestion problems that we have today. Once we receive that input, and hopefully we're looking at towards the end of next month, we have surveys that are online, and we have some hardline copies of surveys today that our staff will distribute, where we're trying to get input from the citizens about what it is they want to see. In the March period of time, we will then develop the plan to spend the dollars around what the citizens have said to us. And then in early April, it will move to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners has to vote to put this on the ballot. I am calling on my colleagues to vote and let the citizens decide whether or not this is something that they want to support. Then we will continue from that point. Once the plan is defined, we'll begin to communicate that plan to the citizens, and then the November 2020 is the election date. So again, we have the surveys that we need your input in order to give us the type of information that we need to develop a plan that the majority of citizens in Orange County see themselves as benefiting from that plan. And so that's it. What we can do at this point is I can respond to any questions that you have, or if you want to give us some feedback at this point, we certainly are willing to do that.
And Mayor, to participate in the survey, you go to your Orange County website, /transportation, gets to that page.
That's correct.
Okay. We'll certainly broadcast that out and try to direct people that follow our social media to your survey.
We
Okay.
have collected, by the way, over 5,000 surveys as of last week, and that number goes up daily.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Sheehan, then Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor Demings, and I appreciate the fact that you've gotten out in the community, and the thing that I'm hearing from my constituents is the green light timing. You know, they're very upset about the fact that it takes, you know, if you come in downtown Orlando, you can see the sequencing working, but if you go outside of downtown Orlando and other areas, it doesn't work as well. So I think part of this initiative is to work with those different agencies to make sure we can get that accomplished, because I know how frustrating, I'm hearing how frustrating it is for people. So I think that's something that would really be important to folks locally.
Okay, and you're absolutely right. The goal is to have better coordination with the municipalities for our transportation engineering city systems so that we can move closer to being really a smart city region, if you will, so that we better coordinate. I touched briefly on it, but we would share a proportion of these revenues with the municipalities, with the exception of those in the Reedy Creek area. So the 11 other cities would, through a formula based on population, would receive, once we take major expenditures, big ticket items like perhaps Sunrail or the expansion of Sunrail or links off the top, then there would be a formula that we will use to provide funding to the other municipalities. I believe that this would help to augment the existing responsibilities of municipalities for roadways within their respective areas, et cetera. But I want you to kind of think about the potential that if we had a spur coming off the main line of Sunrail that would go to the UCF corridor, a spur that maybe would come off the main line and go southeast to Lake Nona Airport, a spur that would come off the main line here in downtown and go northwest to Apopka, or a spur that would go southwest to the I-Drive corridor or to the Dr. Phillips area. If you thought about what would that look like, would it increase ridership? I believe absolutely. Each one of those spurs, based on some of the previous studies that we've done, could cost between $200 million and $400 million. So if we were talking 4 spurs, and if we took the high number, we would be talking $1.6 billion just to add better connectivity to Sunrail. With the Lynx system, if we double the size of the Lynx fleet, it could increase the connectivity, the frequency of operation, and really reduce the overall wait times between buses, and perhaps long-term reduce the cost of transportation for those riders. In a community where we are challenged with housing, affordability, and transportation is one of those things that impacts a person's total household income and creates some challenges. We know that people are sitting in traffic for long periods of time where they are losing precious hours out of the day of their lives that they can't ever get back. And the other option is if we do nothing. It's been, Mayor Dyer pointed out, it's been 17 years since we looked at attempting to do this. Think about it, if we wait another 17 years, what type of colossal failures and increased congestion we will have as a community. It's significant. And we haven't really talked about the potential economic impact, the exponential economic impact, because wherever a spur would go, that it will create some economic development around that spur. We really haven't talked about the impact on those who would be the engineers, the architects, the accountants, the realtors, the developers, the construction workers who would benefit as a result of the expenditures. In order to adequately address the challenge that we have before us, it's not a tens of million dollar solution. It's a multi-billion-dollar solution that we have to undertake in order to move us for decades into the future. We will want this to be something that would take care of the here and now, but also plan for the tremendous growth that we're going to continue to see.
And I had one more follow-up, Mayor.
Okay.
I gave a speech at Seminole State last month, and the students were telling me that they have to, that if they take the bus, and they're actually having to open up rooms at Seminole State for the kids to go in because they're having to get there so early, because if they miss their bus, it's going to be another hour and they're going to miss their class. So I think that people don't realize our most, our kids who are trying to get ahead and go to school and do the right thing that might not be able to afford a car yet because they're in college, that they're suffering because our infrastructure is not working for them. And they're having to get to school a ridiculous amount of time early. And like I say, the college has had to open up areas for these kids to go because they were just hanging out outside the school before the school even opened. That's how bad it is in terms of our bus system not working for our young people. And that's the only other thing I had there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hill?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, Mayor Demmons. You hit all corners, I would say, when you talked about the transportation, economic development, and housing. I guess my first question is almost bouncing off Commissioner Sheehan. Of course, on the west side of Orlando, in the districts that I serve, the general mode of transportation is the link system. And years prior to you being elected, many of the routes, I guess for economic reasons, was stopped throughout the Pine Hills and Paramore Corner also. So I'm really glad that you're championing this initiative here in transportation. So with some of these funds, is there going to be some more dedicated routes that was taken away some years ago? And then there's another one here at Council. I think outside of the downtown and Paramore area, one of the most progressive areas within the city, I call it the city within the city, is Lake Nona. And Lake Nona has no bus stops, but it's so much development and opportunity there. Is there any plans to actually put some public transportation outside of the Sunrail there in the Lake Nona area, so many of the people and the youth or whomever can go down to the great tennis centers and all those great things that Commissioner Gray is doing over in Lake Nona?
The goal would be to improve the operational efficiency of links. Link serves, as I demonstrated to you, about 2,500 square miles. Mayor Dyer and I and others traveled to Pittsburgh better than a year ago. In Pittsburgh, Allegheny County is the county, which is about 700 square miles, and it has some 700 buses. Links serves 2,500 square miles with 305 buses. In Allegheny County, the frequency, 60% or so of their buses, the frequency is 15 minutes or less. I believe that with a dedicated funding source for links, we could see some short-term improvements in links' efficiency. They would be able to purchase buses over time. Some of the efforts here would take time for us to see the benefit, like building spurs that will come off of the main line. That would take years to accomplish. But within a year or two, you should see an improvement in the delivery of service for links. I touched briefly on the fact that in May of 2021, it is projected that the state would turn over the operations of Sunrail to the local governments. That will cause us to really look at the governance structure of the Commuter Rail Commission on Sunrail, and I believe that we will likely have to have a conversation about whether it would be appropriate to consolidate Sunrail with Lynx. We would look to get a permanent CEO to manage this growth associated with Lynx and improve the efficiency and reduce the wait time. The fact that Lynx, in terms of its hours of operation, we would look to expand the hours of operation for Lynx as well, because in some cases, low-wage earners take the bus to work, and if they're working the late night shift, they can't get back home because the bus has stopped running. And so you've seen some stories in the Orlando Sentinel and others about people who sometimes have to wait in the break room overnight until the bus service runs again. So I do believe that with a dedicated funding source, it relieves a lot of pressure on our existing budgets to be able to take the savings, if you will, derived from this dedicated funding source and reallocate those funds to other social service needs like housing and homelessness and some other things that without raising taxes we're able to address these other issues. So I think that there are some positive developments as a result of this tax passing.
Thank you, Mayor, and you just hit that. I'm glad to hear. I was going to ask that question about, is there any way that we can connect this tax to affordable housing? And you asked that as we progress when this is passed, hopefully.
We want to do some better planning where we have centers of commerce where the workforce, we want housing closer to where the workforce works. So we have some initiatives you heard where we even have Universal Studios that has donated 20 acres out in the tourism corridor and another 3 acres for a potential intermodal transportation system to be close to where a housing unit would be developed. They will put in the land. We would likely find a developer to develop it. Up to 1,000 units for, I'm gonna say the workforce that works in that area. Here soon we'll be presenting to the Board of County Commission as a portion of our Housing for All recommendations to create a housing trust fund. We would use a public-private approach where there would be public dollars put in and private sector dollars put in, where we would do some creative things beyond the current federal or state HUD funds, SHIP funds, sale funds. We would use the dollars in that trust fund to do things like help to buy down rent payments for some at-market housing units that will be close to some of our centers of commerce, so that individuals for a period of time will receive some assistance beyond the traditional income-based systems that they have to qualify for. So we are looking at this as a holistic approach to addressing housing, transportation for people throughout the county itself, inclusive of the cities.
Okay, and my last two things. Have we thought about, similar to what the city of Orlando is doing within our CRA downtown Paramore area, that links grapefruit and lime, and when I'm going with that, not free transportation, but dedicated lanes, something like a BRT, I think we were thinking about on that Colonial Drive piece that I guess we're working on some years ago. But throughout, is there opportunity futuristically to make a links dedicated lane? Because as you stated, transportation, especially for working force families, I think that improves the quality of life. It's more than just getting a mode of transportation. If that parent or that family has more time at the dinner table, or they can go to a game versus waiting 3 hours to get to and fro with, from the job and whatnot. If they can just get there straightforward, and I don't know if Billy Hadaway, is there some type of light system where we can monitor the lights in that dedicated lane so that blink spots can just, go straight through? And I guess I'm gonna put my last thing, Mayor, it's a great job.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, in terms of bus rapid transit lanes, that's part of what we contemplate, to have the connectivity, for example, between UCF from the East Colonial Drive to downtown. We could look at rubber tire solutions where we would have bus rapid transit lanes. Those would be dedicated lanes that would run much like the limo system downtown, that doesn't compete with the regular vehicular traffic, where it will have its dedicated lanes so that the commute would be more precise. I live 13 miles from downtown Orlando, and generally speaking, I take I-4 to get to downtown Orlando. Back in my younger days when I had blue lights on my car, I could make it in 13 minutes. Today is maybe 24 minutes, but some days it's 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And I never know which day it is. So my commute is unpredictable. And so when we are able to invest in a robust mass transit system, our commutes can be much more predictable. And people, if that route or ride would be more predictable, people would maybe get out of their individual cars and get into mass transit. If you go to London, England, 60% of their population uses public transit. Here, we're probably in the single digits in terms of the percentage of our population that uses any form of public transportation here. And that's because it's not well connected. It's not frequent enough, it's not convenient enough, it doesn't get them to close enough to their final destinations. And so with this tax, we will be able to get us closer to having that community where our commutes will be much more predictable.
I did say that was the last thing, but I knew what I wanted to say. Is there opportunity with your outreach and working with your team to where I know you're doing it throughout the county with your board of commissioners. Is there opportunity for this board of commissioners here in the city for you to go out at one of our designated places to talk about transportation and why it's so important and why this vote is urgent for the quality of lives and there in each one of our districts?
Okay. Well, out of the 141 or 42 presentations I've done, many of them have been in the city of Orlando. They have been throughout Orange County. They have been in College Park. We have done them in West Orlando at Barnett Park. We have done them at the Citrus.
I understand that. I said with each commissioner.
And so in terms of
that's a yes or no, Mayor.
Engaging with our commissioners, I would tell you, to the extent that we can, absolutely. If you invite us to speak at certain things, we certainly can talk more about it. At some point, right as we speak, we've been working with the city of Orlando, and Mr. Brooks has been working with Mr. Edmondson to get input on the types of projects that the city of Orlando would like to see. So in terms of the governance structure and the accountability of what you can expect is that it will be my desire that there will be an oversight group that would be where the city of Orlando will have a representative on that group. Then we would say the cities in West Orange County, they would select a representative from their group, and then the cities or towns within the central core, they would select a representative. So we would have representation from Orlando and then the smaller cities, and then each one of the Board of County Commissioners would appoint person to this body that would that would serve as an advisory group and make recommendations to the Board of County Commission. We know from some of the litigation and other things that has occurred over time how the language on the referendum has to be structured and how the governance has to be structured for this Charter County surtax that we will be putting on the ballot. Then we will have a technical group. These will be your representatives from your traffic engineering divisions that would look at the projects and prioritize the projects that would ultimately receive funding outside of those major expenditures that we talked about before. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the accountability piece that will be in place and the opportunity for the City of Orlando to give input throughout whatever period of time if we would go out. Right now, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, or maybe 30 years. Based upon that community engagement piece, receiving information from the citizens about what it is they want to see this tax do, then we will develop that plan and tell them, here's what it will cost to deliver what you have said that you want to see in our community.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
And Commissioner, I think it'll be incumbent upon each of us. The county is engaging all of the cities as to the types of projects that we would like to see done in the City of Orlando. And as we develop that, I think each of the commissioners would want to educate your residents in your districts as to what types of things would be happening in your part of the city if this plan passes. Commissioner Stewart, then Commissioner Burns.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your commitment to this. I appreciate it. The answer, the first part of the question is, how do we get engaged as a city with what you're doing? You've got one of the best experts in Central Florida with Byron Brooks. You stole him from us. This happens, we'll get over it.
I talked to Mayor Dyer about that.
But as we move forward, I think the idea that there's a community engagement is the most important. A few months ago, I heard a guy speak, the former director of Links, to share a little bit about how these move forward throughout the community and throughout the state, and those that were successful and those that weren't successful. The primary central theme of those that were successful was to have a specific list of projects available for the community so they can see something very specific about how they're going to benefit from it. And so as you move in April, that's probably the key thing. I think part of the challenge that we have is that we want to put more money, everybody does, into affordable housing. But the idea is to move money around does two things. It is very effective, but at the same time, it may send a signal to the community that it's just business as usual. So I'm a strong believer, and let's tell them exactly what they're going to get out of it. And when they do, like in Tampa and like in other areas where it got passed, people are responsive and will hold us accountable to accomplish those goals, which I think is important. One of the key questions that I have is that the time frame of the actual tax. Is it a 20-year time frame? Is it unlimited? Is it when people are going to vote for it? Where's the direction for that?
It will not be unlimited. It likely will be 10, 20, or 30 years, and that will be based upon that project list that you're referencing. One of the things that Tampa did, it didn't have a list of 1,000 projects. It had kind of functional areas that they would spend the dollars, and so the citizens understood that a certain portion would go to mass transit, a certain portion would go to road infrastructure, a certain portion would go to other things. And so we will do something similar. What we do not want to see happen is where, I'm going to use the term supplanting, where each one of the municipalities and the county as well had project lists and it's a capital improvement plan. We do not want to see where, because of this new revenue source, you would simply abandon those obligations that you already had identified and funded in your respective budgets. We want you to continue with those projects, because this is something that is supposed to be in addition to, in order to kind of have the true impact that we could have on this community. So your own regular project list of resurfacing, et cetera, you should continue. If within your budget each year you had, let's say, I'm going to say 15% of your budget every year was for transportation and roadway improvements, we want you to still honor that same proportion of investment that you were already making, and then use these dollars to leverage what you were doing and leverage what we are able to do across the region as well.
Exactly. I think it's a little bit of a two-edged sword, because part of the challenge is if you tell everybody the specific projects you have, they may or may not like that project and will vote against the moving forward.
Well, and that's why we are doing this.
So it's a broad
we're
spectrum,
doing
yeah.
the survey, getting all of that input, and then we have this responsibility to then report back to the people and say,
Right.
okay, this is what you told us. Here's the plan to deliver on what you said. And so when you go to the ballot, yeah, you will be voting based upon these functional areas that we're going to spend the dollars in over time, and the advisory group will be residents. So those residents we will hope would be geographically diverse, ethnically diverse, and just average citizens. So one of the things that we may require is that in terms of membership on the advisory group, that it be a representative of someone who regularly uses public transit. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it's a little bit like the Metro Plan organization, and that there'll be an oversight.
Yeah,
which is
Metro
very-
Plan, I didn't mention that, but one of the positions would be for a Metro Plan representative.
So, but anyway, as always, I offer my personal help, anything that you've got, but we've been working closely with Billy and with Kevin to make sure that those projects that we're looking forward to, and primarily in maintenance as an example. Years ago, we were told that to do the maintenance of the roads that we feel adequate in the city of Orlando is $150 million to do that. And we budget roughly about $4 million a year to accomplish that task. So you can see that there's no way we can make up to that. At the same time, we also have projects we want to leverage, both with Metro Plan, the state, and with the county. It would be kind of a cool opportunity to get things done. So anyway, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your engagement in the community. And we look forward to continuing to work with you.
And Commissioner, I will tell you that there's not a silver bullet here per se, because we would still have to depend on some federal funds and state funds to really do everything that needs to be done. There's no system around the nation where ridership pays for the majority of it. In most cases, ridership only pays for single digits, and some it may be 15% to 20% of the total cost to operate those systems is paid by riders. But in all of them, the overwhelming majority of the cost is paid for through some type of dedicated funding source.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Commissioner Burns?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. And I've had the opportunity to attend several of your engagement sessions, and I just want to applaud your courage and desire to address this critical issue that I really think will help to influence our region's future. One thing I wanted to ask was, you talked about some of the current funding sources for transportation. Do you see where this tax will be able to supplant some of those sources to where they may be, and if so, do you think there's an opportunity to redirect some of that funding to go to, say, workforce or affordable housing?
So as it relates to transportation, transit, roadway costs, we don't want to see supplanting there. But I believe when we look at the overall budgets, our respective budgets as divisions of government, there are competing interests for it. And if, for example, to the City of Orlando's proportionate share of the Sunrail costs, the links costs, you're pulling out of your general fund. If you have a dedicated funding source now to pay for that, because that will be allowed under this particular scheme that we're suggesting, you now have those general fund revenues that are available where you could invest in housing and other related social issues that we experience as a community. So it would be my desire if we have some cost savings, if you will, that we would leverage that we would relieve that pressure on our total budget because we now have this dedicated funding source, and we will use those other dollars to the benefit of the residents of Orange County. It could be housing, it could be homelessness, it could be a number of other things that your board would decide how you will now kind of free this up. But suffice it to say that the City of Orlando would receive additional funds through this that you do not currently receive in the way of revenues. And anytime you got additional funds, it creates the opportunity for you to expend what you currently receive in different ways. It would be up to this body to decide if you all were going to do a rollback or any of those types of things, because now you have these funds. But if you're like Orange County government, there's no shortage of demand for the funds that we currently have. We do not have enough money to do everything that we need. Even though sometimes people say the government must act like a business, well, the reality of it is the government sometimes provides services where it doesn't get income. We don't get a return on that investment in terms of actual revenues. No, there are costs and things that we have to address that only the government can address to take care of the needs of everybody in our community.
All right. Also, one last thing. You mentioned the economic development that could come with, you mentioned the spurs that can get to other areas in the economic development that happens there. What I'd like to learn more about and see if there's a process to ensure that all communities are able to participate and benefit from the prosperity and economic development that may be coming from this tax. Because I know there are a lot of maybe not minority businesses. You mentioned architects, general contractors, and accountants who historically had not participated in the economic development that comes from the government. So I'd just be interested to see if there's a process that we can get some of those who historically hadn't participated with the city or the county in projects to have the opportunity to do so. So we all communities are truly involved and can participate and benefit from that prosperity that could potentially come from this.
We've engaged an economist to kind of tell us what the economic impact could be if the tax passes, but the goal would be to have minority participation. I do see the opportunity for businesses to be developed as a result of this, right down to new landscape businesses or construction companies. I even see the opportunity, if the size of Links doubles in terms of its fleet, there will be a need for new drivers, new mechanics, and new supervisory personnel. And so part of what we should be about is creating within the private sector and even the public sector pathways for people who may be low wage earners to be able to invest in developing their skills. And so over time, I think that the spinoff, the byproduct of this type of economic activity could truly be a paradigm shift for our entire community. And as elected officials, it's our job to ensure that everybody gets to participate in some meaningful way.
Yeah, I agree, and I just think that we should make it a point to be intentional about having everybody to participate. So thank you for your
Yes, sir.
the good work.
Commissioner Tony Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Demings,
Yes, sir.
he was my chief, he was my lieutenant, he was my captain, he was and then sheriff. Oh my God, I'm growing old with you here.
Yeah, we earn all the gray hair we have, right?
Well, Mayor, thank you for your initiative. I know there's transportation needs because I see them in my district. I haven't heard you saying anything about the summer quarter, but we're going to get to that. Having said that, I also see the need of us to be specific with our communities in terms of how much money we need in order to meet the needs, the transportation needs that we have. How are we putting a priority list instead of waiting to see if it passes or not? Why don't we start putting a priority list now in order for people to see where this money is going to be going so they can be convinced of the need that we have in terms of transportation? I know Commissioner Stewart asked you about how long this is going to take, 10, 20 years. I mean, are we going to put a sunset time before this goes to the ballot? So once again, for people to see how long is this going to be in place? We're going to be getting about $596 million a year. So do we have an idea of how much money are we going to need for X amount of years to meet the needs in terms of transportation?
Okay. Fair questions. We'll kind of back up a little bit here. In terms of the list, we're working with the municipalities to identify those potential projects. The City of Orlando will submit a list of projects, and then we will take that list, the comprehensive list from the different municipalities, and lump them into broad categories, because then part of the plan it will be about executing within a timely manner. Yes, the law will require us to have a specific sunset date as part of the ballot language for the referendum. So the citizens will know that we're going out for whatever period of time. Tampa, Hillsborough County, I should say, was for 30 years. And their total revenues are probably half, somewhere in the $280 million range on an annual basis. But they went out for 30 years because they don't have the 75+ million tourists who we have coming here. And again, I underscore the fact that better than 51% of it will be paid by the tourists who are coming here. So we will look at the project list that the cities are putting together, and that will give the citizenry the general direction that the dollars will be spent. Okay, and in terms of the timing of when certain projects will move forward, will be a function of our mandates for getting RFPs and acquiring right-of-way and other things that we would have to acquire. But suffice it to say, the feedback that we're getting now from the citizens through the surveys that are being collected, it really steers and creates the broad picture by which we're trying to paint upon now. We're painting a picture about what the future can look like for our community in the way of transportation. And so filling in the little details about what that picture will ultimately look like really will take the collective of the different elected bodies within the county to kind of steer that through the representation that I talked about, from that advisory group, that technical group, where you will be a part of for the foreseeable future, you will be a part of the oversight that is, again, these are citizens that will be part of that oversight group that will be driving now the execution of the plan itself going forward.
Mayor, has this list been put before this goes to the ballots?
This list is, we have a deadline, Mr. Brooks, when is the deadline for the list from the cities to to get their list back to you?
February.
February 17th. So your staff here within the city has until February 17th.
And is my Cimarron and Colonial BRT number one on that list?
No,
There will be competing interests. You know what you know what I don't get to do is say this is collectively the priorities will be different things, but somewhere within it. I know you're halfway joking, but you're halfway serious about it. You do want to see, you do want to see how the Cimarron corridor would benefit, and in terms of perhaps bus rapid transit, smart city technologies, the increased routes for links, all of that is part of what we would be ultimately trying to do.
Mayor, over 67,000 vehicles travel through that corridor on a daily basis. Over 67,000 vehicles. We're going to have now a Virgin train coming to the airport, so God knows how many more are we going to get, what kind of transit we're going to get through them. In addition to that, I don't know if you have talked to FJ or not. I'm going to put FJ in a spot here. We have what is called the Orlando Transit Beltway Plan. You know, in terms of, we have Sunrail already coming south, Sunrail is going to go to the airport, so we're going to have bus rapid transit going north, 436, and of course crossing Colonial to create that beltway up around the city of Orlando. And hopefully that's going to be the start of some other things to happen. You talk about monies. Once we have allocated these fundings to the priorities we have, then the rest of those monies are going to be divided among the cities. Do you care to elaborate more in terms of, I mean, do we have an idea? I guess at this point we can have an idea because we don't know exactly how many projects we have that are being prioritized. So
going back to, let me try to back up to a slide here. Okay. If the slide, if we can put this slide up. Do you all, can you see the slide that I have? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Okay. In terms of process, the community engagement, again, is where we are today. When we get the project list from the municipalities on February the 17th, and we conclude taking all of the surveys, we will then develop that plan that you're talking about. Here's the plan based on the input, what the people said to us. And then we'll take it to the board. The board has to perfect the language for the ballot initiative, and then we'll begin to communicate. This will change to a political campaign. Whenever you ask someone to vote for something, it becomes political. So we can't use our government staff to advocate. They can only help educate and provide factual information. But there will be a whole fundraising effort to then communicate to the public what that plan of action is and do the advocacy piece. But we will continue to engage the community and have these dialogues go into every neighborhood, if you will, and continue to educate. But the November ballot is the date where everything comes together at that date. Suffice it to say, because we've now done hundreds of these, we'll do hundreds more before that date. There is not any other effort that has occurred that used this grassroots approach, where we are building the plan from the citizens, from the ground up. We didn't sit in the ivory towers and develop a plan and then take it to the people, trying to sell it to the people. This will be the people's plan that we're talking about, that we're asking them to then vote for.
that's why I'm excited about this. Two more things, real quick. I will suggest that if you all have a chance to go to Curitiba, Brazil, and the mayor is familiarized with this, one of the best bus rapid transit systems there are in the world. So, right, Mayor?
Yes, indeed, and they tied their land use plan to where their mass transit goes. You can have heavier development along the bus and train lines there, and that's actually, Commissioner, the model that the limo system was based on.
Thank you. And finally,
Okay, well, Mr. Brooks just told me the city days are due this week.
Oh, man, I was just gonna
Oh, really?
ask about
Yeah.
that.
And the last thing is, besides yourself, because I know you're busy, do you have a team of people, and this goes with the questions my fellow commissioners asked, do you have a team of people we can go ahead and call? Because I have plenty of people in our community that we can do different presentations to make sure that they get fully informed about your plans.
Yes, we have backup. You know, as a former law enforcement officer, I take backup where I go. But yes, the short answer is yes. A team of people can go out and do this, and we have other community-based organizations who have desire to be advocates as well, and they too will be doing presentations to different clubs, etc. I've been speaking to chambers, a number of them, HOAs and other places to the extent that I can get out and about. You know, I've decided that this is well worth it, and we're doing. And by the way, Mayor Dyer has been a strong supporter of this over time because he sees the long-term vision here. We share that long-term vision. Between the city of Orlando and Orange County government, this is a very positive thing that we're doing together. I will hope that at some point, whether this body could take action in the form of a resolution or something, that you might consider that if you were able to do that as we move forward, we would hope that each one of you become advocates for this yourselves, and as you become better informed about it, that you too will get out and be advocates for it and say, vote for it, if you will. And so I don't want to rob you of that opportunity either to kind of help sell this. If we're the only ones, if I'm the only one selling this, if our staff is the only one selling this, I think we have a problem. We want you to help sell this as well.
We want to thank you, and I'm with you. I'm a total advocate of transportation. Transportation and housing, they go hand in hand in order for us to move our community forward. So you have my support. I'm going to be supporting and going to make sure that I learn this upside down so I can go out there and help you advocating for this.
We have
Thank
it
you.
in Spanish and other versions, by the way, because we're trying to make certain that we communicate with everyone.
Are you saying that because I'm Spanish or Russian? 'Cause I'm Russian. 'Cause
Just information.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much.
All right.
Commissioner Hill, one more.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, you know, I'm not OPD, but you gave Tony that yes. You took me around the world for that yes, but thank you, Mayor. We're church members, at least. I did want to, it's Moso Biddy Hathaway. If I can be brief on this, because what I think is very important now that there's a due date for this plan that the city's submitting, Mayor, you know, I think each commissioner know their districts very well and what the needs are because we're out there on the ground. And wherever this application or plan that's going to be submitted, I think we need to be a part of it. And we have not been briefed. What?
You gotta ask for it.
You can't
Billy,
answer
would
what you
you
don't know
make sure
about
each of the commissioners are briefed before we submit that to the
before
county?
you submit that. Thank you.
But, you know, so we share constituents.
I know,
Your constituents
man,
are my
but
constituents.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Actually,
Well,
this
yes,
mayor
indeed.
understands that the city is in the county.
Exactly.
That's right.
You know,
It's not always been the
And
case.
every one of your constituents gets to vote for me,
It's
too.
absolutely true. That when I was sitting here just
They don't just vote for
marveling,
you all.
actually, in all seriousness, I was just here marveling at that and sitting and say, wow, what a great day it is to be in the city and the county with this collaborative effort and two mayors that get it and work together and all of us having this relationship there at the county, especially with the great leadership of Byron Brooks. It's just the best is yet to come. I'm just so pleased.
Thank you, Commissioner. So Mayor, some will argue, and in fact, one of my opponents in the last mayor's race I had, that we shouldn't do this. We should just ask the federal government for more money. They have plenty of it.
Agreed.
And I can tell you, I was just in D.C. last week, not for the impeachment hearings, but we had you're supposed to laugh about that, U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting, and It's pretty well stressed there that although there is bipartisan support for infrastructure funding, it isn't going to happen
Right.
anytime soon, and that more and more of the responsibility to fund infrastructure, or a larger share of how infrastructure is being funded, is by the state, but most importantly by local governments. So it was really impressed upon us that we have to take into our own hands the funding sources if we're going to improve our infrastructure, that we can't wait around for the federal government to say we're going to increase the gas tax for the first time in 100 years and provide some additional funding to the local governments. We have to do it. So this is our opportunity to do that. So we stand with you and we will support you and look forward to working together.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity to come forward. We'll continue the dialogue with each one of you and provide whatever briefings that you feel that you need. We'll make our staff available. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, I think some in the audience are here for the next meeting that I'm going to call to order, but wasn't that pleasant to sit through that, and educational as well? So you got a two for today. You got to learn about the Transportation Initiative and also come talk to us about some good things happening around Lake Eola Park. Okay, I am going to call the workshop is adjourned, and we're going to call the agenda review meeting for January 27th, 2020 to order. Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify relating to any of the items on the consent agenda? And I do have several cards, so Charlie Gray, you're first up. You got Charlie, then Ted Haddock, and then Doug Hadaway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm very encouraged by what I heard from Mayor Deming, and we've got some great leadership here in the community now, and to have this come up at this time I think is really great. I've been here a long time and I've seen it. I feel like, Lucy and the football, you know, we have tried so hard and they keep moving the damn football. Before I say anything about what I came here to say, is one more thing. I take Sunrail, and I enjoy Sunrail. It's a great ride. 51 minutes. I live 25 miles up the way. And you know, generally I'll walk from Church Street Station to my office. But when it's real hot, it's not very, I'm not really interested in walking. So I try to take the limo. When it's raining, I try to take the limo, or I'll call, maybe do something else. But you know, if limo stopped right there, if it give you time to stop whenever Sunrail stops, it wouldn't cost any money, but it'd be right there for everybody when they get off. Might do the same thing at Lynx Station. But let me say what I came to say.
Charlie, we do have scooters out there now.
Someday I'm gonna have y'all all up, ride Sunrail. We'll have a barbecue up there and go back on Sunrail.
All right.
I'm really very pleased to be able to be here to advocate for the Orlando Trust project for Lake Eola. My home is on Lake Eola, the corner of Robinson and Broadway. I used to catch bass out of Lake Eola. So I've always loved Lake Eola. I remember when the fountain was put there. I think Linton Allen had a lot to do with that. And the fountain was great, but it got in disrepair and it just became a real eyesore. And I remember when the mayor of Orlando said, "What do you think about fixing that up?" I said, "It's been an eyesore so damn long, I'm not sure it's a good idea." He fixed it up and it's beautiful. It is beautiful, Mayor. You did a great job. when Southeast Bank asked me to form a new bank in Orlando, they said, "Where do you want it?" I said, "Well, I want it on Lake Eola." I said, "Well, give me 5 locations around town and we'll look at all of them." I said, "Okay." I gave him 5 locations. 4 of them were downtown. I took it back. He said, "Well, I had a market study done of those." This is the chairman of the board of Southeast Bank, which at that time was the biggest bank in Florida. And he said, "The market study says that it ought to be downtown, not on Lake Eola." He said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, if you want me to form your bank, it'll be on Lake Eola." So that's when we bought 17 parcels of property down there for the bank. Of course, as you know, the bank went under, the big bank went under, but Lake Eola is very, very important, and I think to not have high-rises on the park property is absolutely critical. It's ludicrous to put something like that right on the park property. I think there should be good restrictions for setbacks as far as the height of buildings. And what the trust is trying to do, I think, is really very apropos, and I think Commissioner Patty is maybe going to help us, and we certainly hope that everybody will help her help us. And I won't take up any more of your time. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. Ted?
Mayor Dyer, City Commissioners, it's a privilege to report to you today. And as you know, my name is Ted Haddock, and in addition to serving as our Family Foundation's Executive Director, I'm representing Orlando Land Trust as its President of the Board of Trustees. And thankful to Mr. Gray for speaking as a fellow trustee. As you know, recently several Orlando-loving citizens joined together to form Orlando Land Trust. And it exists to protect and improve local green space for healthier life in Orlando. Our all-star board of trustees includes business, philanthropic, education, environmental, and civic leaders, including former mayors of Orlando, Glenda Hood and Bill Frederick. We're also grateful for Mayor Dyer's support. And I'm also pleased to say that we wouldn't be here today were it not for the leadership of Commissioner Sheehan, who's expressed a desire to support Orlando Land Trust in our initial commitment to expand the southwest corner of Lake Eola Park by offering a substantial portion of her discretionary budget towards this exciting and achievable goal. Commissioner Sheehan, it's been a joy for me personally to see you link arms with 2 other of our trustees, well, all of us really, but especially with Lynn Long and Eugenia Sefcik, as 3 powerhouse women in action, setting the pace for good in our city. So thank you all for that. And I can't tell you also how much your courage to stand has meant for Orlando Land Trust and jumpstarting our fundraising campaign just before the holidays. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to publicly thank you and to report that with your support and a groundswell of grassroots contributions, we've been able to raise already $800,000 towards our $3.5 million goal. And that's in 4 months. So we're confident that we'll be able to hit the mark by 2021, which is our scheduled deadline, and we're on pace to raise $1 million by March. So thank you for everybody who's been a part of that. It's also worth noting that Orlando Land Trust is collaborating with the Trust for Public Land, which was instrumental in working with Commissioner Sheehan and the city to expand the southeast corner of Lake Eola Park in 2013. And as our vibrant city continues to grow, I know we all know this, but I got to say it, into America's premier future-ready city, its community's need for quality parks, green space, and natural habitat grows with it. Orlando Land Trust is committed to work hand-in-hand with the city and its community stakeholders to find restorative solutions that make Orlando even more beautiful, healthy, and enjoyable for all. In fact, I'd like to invite everyone here today who's come in support of Orlando Land Trust and Commissioner Sheehan's generous contribution to stand up, if you would. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all. This is really what we're about, a collaborative effort towards civic responsibility. And as citizens, we shouldn't expect the city to solve all our problems. And the city certainly doesn't expect its citizens to do everything on their own. But together, I truly believe that there's nothing that we can't do. And Orlando Land Trust's commitment to help establish a western gateway to Lake Eola Park, I think, is just a small example of what's possible for the common good for all of the city's districts when we work together. So that's, I believe, all I have to say this morning. And if I may,
Just before you do that, Ted.
Yes, sir.
You spoke generally about it, but you want us to talk specifically about why you're raising the $3 million plus?
Sure.
What property are you buying?
So the property that the Orlando Land Trust has a contract on is the Merle property that is the 7-Eleven building, and then there's a barber shop and a couple little things connected to it. So it's that corner parcel on the corner of Roslyn and Central. And so that is one building block that would be a gateway to the park. And there's a couple adjacent properties that would be part of a master plan that we'd love to present to the city at some point soon.
And since I've been mayor, there's probably been, 5, 6 different proposals to develop a high-rise on that corner, and you can't do it without that 7-Eleven property. So this will pretty much take care of what Charlie was talking about in terms of any additional high-rise buildings on the park property specifically.
That is true.
So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I would just add that the Orlando Land Trust position is not one of, we seek win-win solutions with all of the city's stakeholders. So this is not a war on development or anything like that. This is simply saying, what's the best use for our city and communities for this land? And there's maybe different opinions on that, but the Orlando Land Trust has the point of view that working together we can create an entryway to the park that would be a benefit for everyone. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Doug?
Good morning, Mayor Dyer, City Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Doug Hadaway. I represent the Trust for Public Land. As a reminder that parks are more than just recreational spaces, they enhance public health, because if you provide a place that's accessible to go, people will use it and will move. It also boosts property values. Time and time again, market studies show that a premium is paid for properties that are located in proximity as well as adjacent to parklands that are accessible, as clearly indicates with the Lake Eola Park that also infiltrates stormwater and cleaning the water that comes from our urban surface areas. It cleans the air. The vegetation that parks support and thrive in help to clean the air in our urban centers. And then lastly, it bolsters economic development, because parks are a quality of life matter that businesses, when determining where to relocate or expand, do consider the quality of life for their employees as well as the communities where they want to locate. So parks are more than just recreational spaces, and clearly this park, Lake Eola Park, is a gem for the city. And we are pleased to have been called by the Orlando Land Trust to assist with this project. And what struck me working with the Trust for Public Land as a national land trust created in 1972 is there's a lot of work out there, and we have to be very strategic about our resources and where we invest our time and effort. And it's in those areas where people support and are in strong support of bettering their communities that we find most easy to help and work in collaboration. So we're pleased to have been called to work on this one, and primarily our role in this one, even though we have a suite of services as a national land trust, furthering our mission of creating parks and protecting land throughout America, is as an acquisition partner particularly. And of course we'll be assisting in furthering their strong efforts as lead to raise the funding, but we are managing the real estate acquisition because we do that and we do that well. I might note that we also have what's called a park score. That's a premier GIS-based, very sophisticated analysis of the largest 100 metropolitan areas in the United States, including the city of Orlando, to determine how well are the cities doing in providing accessible green space for the city. And so even when this project is completed, as well as potentially additional lands adjacent to it, I believe the Orlando Land Trust geography is at least the city of Orlando, and so we look forward to continuing and building on that collaboration to benefit all parts of the city of Orlando as well. Commissioner Sheehan, thank you very much for your motion and your ask for contributing some funding toward the cause. Thank you very much for that. And I just wanted to introduce myself, explain what our particular role is in the property and this particular project. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much for your support.
Okay, thank you, Doug. So don't tell Mayor Demings that you guys were here for this. He thought you were here for his presentation. We'll just let him go on believing that. Okay, Madam Clerk, who's first up on the commissioners today? Commissioner Hill?
I've been brief, Mayor. I have nothing.
Commissioner Burns? Commissioner Ray?
Excuse me, yes, Mayor. The only issue on the agenda, I'll be voting no on C4, which is on the consent agenda, and I'll explain more detail at council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Ortiz?
Thank you, Mayor. I need to see Mr. Mike Rhodes and Miss Elizabeth Dang. That's it.
All right, Commissioner Stewart?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to see Chris McCullion on some questions on the CRB.
And Commissioner Sheehan?
Well, thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank everybody who came here today to support my contribution to the Land Trust. You know, Lake Eola is a jewel of our city, and when that fountain was not working, what people forget is that Heather helped me get on every radio station in town and beg for money, and we got that fountain up and running when it hadn't been running for almost a year and a half. And we did that with $2 sometimes. We got a lot of $2 contributions because I kept telling people, if everybody would just give $2, we get this thing up and running. And we did get it up and running through the support of the community. And Eugenia and Lynn came to me and asked about possibly adding the land to the park. And I said, you know, I've already asked this council for money to buy Constitution Green, okay, and adding 1.5 acres to Lake Eola Park. It's kind of tough for me to keep asking this council to support millions of dollars going to the park. And we kind of need to do this as a grassroots effort, not realizing that they would just take this and Ted would get involved and take this and start running and reach out to Doug with the Trust for Public Land, who actually helped us with the Orlando Urban Trail and the Lake Eola Park and Constitution Green. So thank you for that. I mean, people don't realize it's these wonderful collaborative efforts. There's a lot of work that goes behind making these things happen. And I want to thank all of you because you are so clearly passionate about making this happen. And I too support development, but the problem is when you got private property adjacent to a park, the only way to decide what's going to happen on that private property is to own it. And that's what they did. They went and went to Trust for Public Land, have a contract. And I want to thank all of you for that, because this clip, again, is going to be an entryway to the park. It's going to really show that we care about what's built adjacent to the park. And now I'm going to ask everybody who had opinions about that this shouldn't get built and this and that, put your support where your opinions are, basically put your money where your mouth is, and help us raise this money. I know we're having a tough time with the city website, and it's kind of difficult to figure out with the drop downs and how to raise the money, but we're going to work on that so that you can figure out how to make it easier to make the donation. But I'm asking everyone in Orlando, if this is important to you, if it's important to you to have green space, if it's important to you to save this clip of the park, like we heard so many opinions, please make a donation, even if it's $2. We'd like more, but please make a donation, because this is so very, very important. And I felt it was important enough to put $50,000, which is half of my annual contribution, or half of my annual allotment for, you know, public benefit use for capital improvement funds. I felt it was important to do that because I'm very committed to this process, and I really want to see this happen. And I wanted to take it to council because it's a lot of money, and I wanted to make sure that I had the approval of the City Council. So thank you, everyone, for being here today, and I really appreciate this, and thank you for forming the Orlando Land Trust, because I think we're going to be doing many wonderful things in years to come. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray.
Yeah, just clarification, I was working off a stale agenda, so it's item C3, which is
I
in
was
District 1.
wondering about that.
Thank you for the correction from the clerk's office, so C3, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I was wondering why you were objecting to an annexation in District 4. Okay, thank you all for being here today, and with that, we'll stand adjourned.